I'm already winning. I got up the steps in high heels. Thank you. As you gathered, I'm Martina Byrne. Irish, as you probably guessed from the accent. So it's my opportunity, very quickly, if I may, to welcome you all to Dublin and to Ireland in the Irish language, Céad Míle Fáilte, which specifically translates as 100,000 welcomes, because God knows in Ireland we don't like to do things by halves. So you are that much welcome. I also want to take this opportunity, selfishly, to thank AMEC and everybody connected to it for the Barcelona Principles, because after decades working with and for the public relations profession, the Barcelona Principles, in my experience, has been a genuine game changer. And I have been known to bang on about it. So this is kind of my Anorak's holiday conference. I'm not going to talk about AI, so for those of you who'd like a break from AI, you're very welcome to this sanctuary. But I am going to talk about some observations that I've made over all my decades in the field. I've come across some barriers. I'm really interested to know if you recognize them too. I'm hoping that we'll use the Q&A time for you to give me your solutions so I can take them back as I continue to teach and train people in the principles. As part of my long career, and you can read about it on the app, I've had lots and lots of conversations with people about the principles. And obviously lots of questions have been raised. Those questions have changed over the years. As you would expect, they've evolved. But there's been one or two persistent ones. And I'm going to share that with you today. And I'm also going to share with you some proper measurement, some hard fact statistics about the Barcelona Principles here in Ireland and their adaptation, or adoption, I should say. Mostly what I'll talk about, though, is some very sticky barriers to the full, and I would argue, proper implementation of the principles. And these barriers, we can no longer say are caused by the lack of a framework. We have it, the Barcelona Principles themselves. Nor are they caused by the lack of technologies or tools. With the advent of AI, we probably have more technology and tools than we quite yet know what to do with. In my experience, they're human barriers. They are behavioral, they're psychological, they're cultural. And what I'd like us not to forget in all of this talk and these wonderful presentations today is that unless we solve these human barriers, we're not going to get the best out of AI, and we're certainly not going to get the best out of the principles. But I do believe that the barriers I've come across are soluble. And I also do believe, picking up on Sarah Waddington's point just previously, that this is really a critical time. And Professor McNamara made the same point as well. It's a critical time for us to really differentiate what we do and to lay claim on the economic, social, cultural, and political contribution that public relations people make every day and have been for years. And by the way, just a little point on the Irishness and the storytelling. It might surprise some of you to know that Ireland was a very early adopter of public relations. Our own Public Relations Institute of Ireland is just a few years younger than the Public Relations Society of America. Our government and government departments and public sector were very early in establishing proper public relations, as in press officers for those departments. So we have a bit of a track record in it. So yeah, let me move on. Let's see what the research in Ireland tells us. So as you might have gathered, I was CEO of the Public Relations Institute of Ireland for 8 years. And in that period, I was delighted that back in 2019, we launched the first ever census of public relations people and communicators in Ireland. That was members and non-members, so very wide-reaching, public, private sector, NGO. And what we were able to establish, amongst other things, was the level of adaptation of the Barcelona Principles. In 2019, AVE usage was at 25%. I think they were probably lying. I think there was probably a lot more people than that using AVE, but they'd already copped on that that would annoy me, so they didn't say yes. So AVE usage has come down in the space of 2019 to 2025 to 5%. And I'm sympathetic that some of those 5% are using it because it's demanded of them. So we have a problem there. We need to continue to do the education work that I think it was maybe Karma and Tourism Ireland referred to earlier, in terms of, you know, sometimes there are managers or bosses who demand it. But that's still a good place to be. If you have a look at the wee pie chart there, you'll notice that in 2025, 20% were measuring and evaluating their work purely on the basis of media relations. 42% were presenting media data, media monitoring data, but they were also looking at some other outcomes. So that's not bad. 22% were reporting up to the level of looking at outcomes and impact. Now, there's two ways to look at that. On the one hand, great, 22%, that's a good start after just, you know, really a few years of impressing it upon people. But you could also wonder, why only 22%? What's up with the rest of them? And that's where my conversations with people during training sessions and lecturing sessions comes in, because that's what I want to share with you today, what I think is causing that not quite as strong adaptation as we would like to see. And what it comes down to is, I think there's roughly 3 human barriers. First of all, we don't like having difficult conversations. Not in the early days of a new relationship with a client or in the early days of a new job. We don't want to be seen to be asking difficult questions, and so very often we don't get the information that we need in terms of what is the organisation trying to do? What do you want me as a communicator to contribute to? And I think that is understandable. And I think if it's, and I'm hearing it from senior people, not just middle or junior people. So yeah, I'll go through each of these in turn, but that's the first one anyway. People telling me they cannot get, or they don't know how to ask for, or it's not being offered to them in terms of the information that they need to draft really good communications objectives. And we all know the principle number 1 of the Barcelona Principles is about the critical importance of good objectives, and objectives that are linked back to the organisational objectives. The second thing then, barrier, is sometimes in the absence of that kind of end game or end point, we crack on. I think a lot of people, public relations people in my experience, they're doers. They're can-doers. They get on with it. They put together the best program that they can based on what they know, or what they know has worked in the past. And also, we often, if not always, report in the terminology of communications people, not in the terminology of senior leadership teams, management teams, and indeed boards. And I agree with Sarah, we should be aiming for that level of conversation. So we tell each other what excites us. And again, I think that's a very understandable behaviour. So in the first case there, the difficult conversations, people tell me they get little or no brief. And if they do, sometimes it's simply a wish list of the coverage that I want. And you have somebody who has no clue about communications or public relations telling you that they want X, Y, and Z pieces of coverage. You know, that's just not workable. It's simply not workable. In other cases, the brief is limited. But certainly it is not the organisational objectives that we need. We had a fantastic example of it today from Tourism Ireland and Karma, where, you know, on both sides, they were really, really clear about what Tourism Ireland is about. What is the purpose of that organisation? And as a result, the communications and PR team were able to deliver a fabulous programme. We need to be asking those difficult questions if the information is not forthcoming. Barrier number 2, we accept exclusion from organisational intelligence. I deliberately wrote, we accept it, and we move on and we crack on with a programme in the best way we can. Now, in the absence of organisational objectives, we don't know where we're trying to get to. And in the absence of organisational intelligence, data, we don't know where we are now. So far in this little scenario I've presented, I don't know where I'm starting from, I don't know where I'm going, but in good tradition, I'm running as fast as I can. And that's the situation, genuinely, that many people who talk to me tell me about. And by the way, that's not new, that's been going on for years. I've experienced it myself. And I've also been one of those who just puts the head down, cracks on with the best programme and campaign that we can in the absence of this. I don't think we can allow this to continue anymore. And I don't mean that in a threatening kind of way. I mean, I think as a profession, we really are being pushed to the edge now in terms of establishing the value of the work that we do. So, oh yes, sometimes people tell me they can't get the information from their managers or from their clients because it's commercially sensitive. How do they work with their accountants, auditors, lawyers, and so? I think maybe we do need to communicate that we understand this and we can protect that data and that we have systems in place to protect that data. But that, you know, that should be normal business practice. The third barrier, as I mentioned, is that in the absence of smart objectives, we report on outputs, on what we did, on what we achieved. We know what makes our day. And there's nothing more fun than celebrating with another PR person or comms person when you get that piece. Because you know how hard you had to work to get it. You know the competition you faced to land that piece of coverage. But you know what? We're the only people that gets excited about it. Truly. Our clients, our managers don't get excited about it. They have a whole other different set of things that keep them awake. So when it comes to reporting to non-coms, we need to show what we're doing to get them more sleep, to help them deliver their KPIs, to join the dots, so to speak, between what we're doing and how well they're doing. Reporting should not be justification after the fact or after the activity. It should be about providing regular insights that are valuable to the management team, that are constantly informing the decisions that they're taking. And then we don't have this end of month, end of year panic about how we have to justify our existence. Measurement and evaluation should be seen not only as learning for yourself and your own team, but also as ongoing organisational intelligence that everyone can benefit from. And by the way, if we do that, so if we move from the tactical reporting that we tend to be comfortable with towards the strategic reporting, it makes those difficult conversations I mentioned at the start, it makes them so much easier. But if we're not reporting in that language, then we have a vicious circle that when we come looking for that kind of management and business data, they'll think there's something wrong with us. Why are you suddenly talking like that? You know, you didn't used to. So I think we have a job of work to do there. The research shows that we're getting better at measurement and evaluation, but many of us do struggle to join the dots between our inputs and the outcomes that we set about delivering. We struggle to present ourselves as the kind of strategic management advisors that Sarah mentioned, rather than as tacticians or content creators. We're so much more than content creators. We only create content if we believe it's valuable. And if you get what I mean, like, we do it as part of a strategy, not just for the sake of doing it. We need to link what we do and what we do well with how the organization does. And I don't know, I think you can see it there. There's a bit of flash on the screen, but if communications is positioned as tactical, well, as you'll hear over the next 2 days, AI can do a really good job of that. If our value proposition is reported in terms of media monitoring and so on, AI can do a very good job of that. So where does that leave us? How do we take ownership of our intellectual and strategic contribution? Dare I say it, how do we justify our roles, our salaries, our fees? How are we going to start getting paid for what we know rather than what we do? Because AI will certainly help us with the doing. But to Professor McNamara's point, it's our intellectual capacity, our empathy, our ability to make decisions, to see the way forward, to strategize. That's where we add value. So not to be too disappointing, let's carpe diem, let's seize the opportunity. I can't keep going on training in the Barcelona Principles for many more decades. Come on, let's fix this, okay? And I still come back to it. It's the first principle, the objective setting. Let's move on. Let's promote not just what we do, because we do that in all of our reporting, but let's start talking about how we do our work. Let's start being explicit about not quite our terms of business, but what we need from our clients and our management teams in order to be able to deliver a really good program or campaign or long-term relationship. Let's explain why we need the data we need, that we can mind it carefully for them. Let's explain why we're not going to be able to measure our progress or theirs if we can't get the information we need in terms of the statistics of where we are now, but also their organizational objectives. Let's put it on our websites. Let's put it on our boilerplates. Let's talk about and inform and educate how we do what we do. People don't need to know what we do, but they do need to know how we go about our work. And that's where, again, we can differentiate ourselves. And if we're talking about our outputs on LinkedIn, why don't we talk about the outcomes that they delivered? You know, to move away from the, and here's a fabulous piece of coverage that I got from my client last Saturday, whatever. Let's talk about that as a result, volunteers showed up to the event, or votes were cast for Bulgaria, or whatever the case may be. But let us talk about our work in terms of outcomes and hope that people notice the contribution then. But if we keep talking about outputs, that's what they will box us into and essentialize us as. So, quick summary, let's have those difficult conversations. Let's ask for the organisational intelligence and data that we need. And let's start reporting on how well the business is doing rather than a report card on why I was so busy last week. And if you have any other suggestions as to how we move past these barriers, these very human barriers, I'm all ears.
Thank you, Martina. A nice reminder that we are human. And it's
and fallible.
And fallible in a data context. We're just going into the networking coffee break now, but if anyone wants to ask Martina a quick question, I think we can take one or two.
Or offer any solutions.
Or offer any solutions, indeed. Okay, everyone's desperate for a cup of tea, I think.
Totally understand.
Please give it up for Martina. Thank you.